The Brian Crabtree Show on Demand is brought to you by Snelling's Walters Insurance. More than an advisor, an advocate. SnellingsWalters.com. The Brian Crabtree Show, live in Atlanta, afternoon starting at 4 on Biz 1190, Biz1190.com, and the Biz 1190 mobile app.
The Brian Crabtree Show.
All right, enough! This fighting stops now!
All right, it's great to have you here. Welcome to the program at Brian Crabtree on Twitter, online for 24/7 analysis, highlights, and opinion. Talk40.com, talk40.com. Always great to have you tuning in. Be sure to spread the word. I want to play you a piece of audio that's been uncovered, and it fits something that was said on Fox News Channel yesterday quite handsomely. It's a computer store manager in 1979. Now, this was when the Apple computer had just came out, and I think this store was selling this computer. And if you can imagine, this was sort of like in our time when we heard first about the smartphone, the iPhone 1, when Steve Jobs announced it. You knew that somehow this device was going to be extremely transformative. You may not have known to the extent or degree it's become, but you knew this was going to in a major way change the way we do pretty much everything. So here's a computer store manager talking about the impact of a computer or computers on jobs. Now, keep in mind the context. We've had computers prior to the personal computer, which was ultimately invented by Apple. They had computers back into the 50s and 60s that did various functions. But to do what your smartphone does today, those computers would take up an entire wing of a high-rise. Here we go.
So as to this question of information society, those that will deal with the computer will be far and away ahead of those that do not. Computers are designed to eliminate tedium in our lives. If a computer does not do that, the probability is that you really didn't need a computer to begin with. You probably needed more arms and legs. It's going to be very interesting. The future, this question of how many jobs are going to be created and how many jobs are going to be totally obsoleted by the computer. A computer really has never obsoleted a job that didn't need to be obsoleted. The case is that we are humans and we are much more adaptable to our environment than the computer is to its own. We should be the ones that adapt and let that computer take over the tedium, so then that 3-day work week really does become a reality.
All right, that was pretty insightful. I mean, he didn't nail it, but he got it pretty close. I mean, the thing that I'm most upset about is that for some reason with all these computers, we haven't figured out how to have a 3-day work week. It's almost like we get to work our normal 5 days and then spend at least 1 or 2 days on the weekend figuring out how to fix the computers that get in our way all week that we need to do our job. So what we've done is we filled up our lives with all of these extra things now that we must do. Social media, Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, our email instead of just our voicemail. We have letters still, and we have snail mail, and we have, emails, and we have all these different ways of text messages. And so we've added all of these layers we never had, which has basically allowed us to do exponentially more. But I'm not sure if we're actually accomplishing that much more in terms of progress, because before all of this technology that sort of chokes us, we were basically doing everything manually. And I did a story earlier this week about Zennials, and I'm a Zennial because I'm between 34 and 40 years old. I'm at 40. I'm in the upper end, 40 years old. And we're people for half of our lives grew up without any of this stuff. That really was always a computer, it seemed, but it was always just kind of over there, and it was a novelty. And so we knew what it was like to have interpersonal reactions, communications, pick up the phone and actually talk, see people, shake hands face to face. Now everything is digitally. There's an interface between us, and it's very damaging to our culture. But he said some things there I think are interesting. We made the computer first an asset through the 90s, and then it's become also an obstacle, depending on how you view it. But most importantly, he said, computers have never obsoleted a job that didn't need to be obsoleted. So if a computer can do the job, then why would you need a human doing it? The human in terms of judgment and capacity would be someone that needs to be managing the processes and having a vision for what to do. Now, he also said something important. Those that deal with the computer in terms of embrace it, take it in, go, this isn't a fad. This is something that's going to be central to our lives. They will be far ahead of those that don't. And I did. I was lucky. My dad and mom got me a computer, and I got enough experience to when I really realized I needed it. It became my big lift in 1999 when I had this ridiculous idea that was just radical and out of touch, that I would actually produce contact information for people who wanted to buy or sell real estate on a form on a website. I mean, this was just, we just don't do things this way. You need to make calls, Crabtree, to people that have for sale by owner signs. You got to drive around. You got to knock on doors like a vacuum cleaner salesman. And this is the kind of stupid advice I was getting in 1999, 2000, 2001 by old bitty real estate agents. And I said, thank you, but no thanks. And I was getting at one point, I mean, literally 30 or 40 leads a day in one town in South Carolina because I was the only one doing it. And now over time that changed. And it's a lot harder to do that now because everybody's doing it. But see, when you're ahead of it, you can get a big runway and you can develop a big image and really own a space in business. And a lot of people that are struggling in the economy right now are struggling because they're not embracing the next technology now. And they didn't embrace today's technology back then because they're always status quo people. That's what's happening in Washington. The status quo people aren't embracing the changes that the American people want. And eventually the American people will have their way. And they'll be out because they're not willing to embrace the fact and get on the Trump train that this is really what the people want. But in business, there's the same mentality. People don't embrace what they need to embrace to be successful. So you have this. Here's one that I can't get my head wrapped around, but I keep hearing it. So it's not conventional wisdom because it's making me think. Charles Krauthammer on the trucking industry. This is mind-boggling, what you're about to hear here.
I believe that we may have to think about heavily subsidizing the work of many people whose jobs can be overcome by automation. Within 5 years, it's possible that the trucking industry will disappear. They're going to be self-driving the trucks, and we are going to have thousands of people self-employed with dignity and work out of a job. I think what we're going to end up doing is not a guaranteed income where you sit around, if you're in Colorado, and smoke dope all day. That's the incentive. But to try to find a way to subsidize employment, even in the face of automation, so that humans can actually be competitive with machines.
All right, so stop it. And let me tell you my personal story here in the time we have. I realized I was sitting in a seminar. It's the second time I've heard this, and I want to share with you the word micro jobs. And if you're not thinking about micro jobs, you're going to get washed away. Truck driver, micro jobs. Executives, micro jobs. Even some executives may be computers at some point with artificial intelligence. And I got to thinking, damn, I have micro jobs. I was in a seminar of some sort, and it was a talk radio seminar of all places, and usually they're stuck 20 years ago. And one of the consultants said everyone's going to have micro jobs. And what does that mean? Well, it means it's what I'm doing now. I do a little bit of real estate brokerage to subsidize my lifestyle. So my micro job is the real estate brokerage of selling houses. My wife does most of the sales. She has a full job. I don't believe that the real estate agent will exist in 10 years in the same way it does now. I believe that they will be rendered as useless as they are now, but they will actually be useless because the consumer will be empowered. But my micro job keeps me ahead of that. The micro job I have, which is more of a macro job, is the media, radio, and writing. And that makes me money. I also have properties that I lease and renovate. That makes me money. I have properties I buy with a partnership and flip, and that makes me money. And I also have investments that I have purchased in terms of paper assets, stocks, and things, and that makes a little bit of money. No one of those jobs really pays me a ton of money. But I make a really good, blessed living from all of those jobs combined, which means that if that industry gets washed away by the technology Krauthammer was describing in the truck industry, I have subsidized my income. Not the government subsidizing, but I have subsidized my income in such a way that the changes in technology can't take me all at once. That is the future. And if you're not thinking micro jobs, you're going to have problems.
The Brian Crabtree Show on Demand is brought to you by Snelling's Walters Insurance. More than an advisor, an advocate. SnellingsWalters.com. The Brian Crabtree Show, live in Atlanta, afternoon starting at 4 on Biz 1190, Biz1190.com, and the Biz 1190 mobile app.